Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville, and you've got me on an interesting day today. For the first time in 20 years, I went scuba diving. Strictly speaking, I actually did the first day of a scuba diving course. Long story short, 20 years ago I used to scuba dive quite a bit. Haven't dove for a long time. Bought my wife a scuba diving course as a birthday present this year. She didn't want to do it alone. I needed a refresher. I'm doing the course. Spent the day in the pool. Came back and thought to myself, I'm too tired to do anything. My football team got creamed and I can't watch the football. So what am I going to do? I'm going to film a review of a dive watch. So that brings us to which dive watch. Today it's the Seiko Save the Ocean Turtle. The basics here. Okay. I'm not going to tell you who Seiko is. If you don't know who Seiko is, what the hell are you doing watching a watch video? That just doesn't seem to make sense to me. In short, Seiko are probably the world's biggest watchmaker, making a watch pretty much for everyone to do everything. That's both their great sin and their great glory. I think that many people see that mixing with the pros and providing products below $5,000 to $10,000 is somehow cheapening your brand, and as a result, Seiko is tarred with that brush. I think that's BS. I think that rather than being scorned, Seiko should be applauded for the fact that a company that can sell some of the very best timepieces in the world can at the same time provide a $50 watch for a kid who's starting their collection. But I think the core of what a Seiko is in their dive line. No matter what they do anywhere else, I think that everything else in the Seiko line sort of springs from the fountainhead that is their dive watches, and that really reflects what they do across the line, across their whole range. In that, even in their dive watches, you can go as low as a $200 XKX and as high as a $10,000 Marine Master Pro. And interestingly, at every point along there, this watch will be a true ISO certified, uncompromised dive watch. No matter what bells and whistles and frills and fancies a Seiko diver has, it is always ultimately and only a dive watch. So let's talk about the watch itself. As I said, it's the Seiko Prospect Save the Ocean Turtle, reference SRPC 91K1. Okay, in terms of year, it was a 2018 special edition, not a limited edition. Seiko does these special editions where they'll release essentially an unlimited number of watches, but only within a short space of time. It actually has some quirky little retailing impacts as well. I learnt from an AD that an AD may not discount a limited edition, but may discount a special edition. So another interesting little difference between limited and special in Seiko land. The Save the Ocean Turtle is a special edition. I got mine at something of a discount. Those which are available on the market still are available at a discount. This was a 2018, I think late 17 maybe model, that I don't believe they're available from the factory new anymore. There are still new ones kicking around on the internet. That said, the fundamental watch has continued and been reissued, this time with a black or gunmetal grade DLC coating all over the case. So most of what I'm going to say about this watch is equally applicable to that watch. So if you see the grey one, obviously apart from the colours, most of what I say is going to still be true. What is it? It's a cushion case diver. Look, it's been dressed up with some fancy colorways and some fancy texturing on the dial, but like all Seiko divers, it is fundamentally a hardcore diver. Size and wearability, it is hefty, but it is eminently wearable. 45mm across, 48mm lug to lug, and just 14mm thick. So that diameter might put you off, but don't be. Seriously look at the other two dimensions. It is only 48mm lug to lug, and it is only 14mm thick. You'd be surprised at how well this wears. It's incredibly comfortable on my 19cm wrist, and reviews on the internet routinely say that this can go down to 16cm wrists and still be very, very wearable. I think also I've got to stress in wearability, not just a size thing, but a comfort thing. Aesthetically, I'm not a massive fan of the cushion case. For me, it's kind of neither here nor there, neither square nor round. But I can't deny that the cushion case generally, and particularly the way that that Seiko has implemented it here, with the kind of quite narrow base that almost swells, leaving a space and room to move on the case sides, really makes this watch very, very, very comfortable. This is one of my cheapest watches. It is also one of my favorite watches to simply wear, because I hate it when people say you forget you're wearing it, because I don't wear a watch so that I can forget that I'm wearing it. But it will never bug you. You'll never think I need to take this watch off to do something, because it's just so right in terms of wearing it. Materials, nothing particularly exotic. 316L steel, which is kind of the steel of 98% of the watch industry. I'm pretty sure it's an aluminium bezel, could be steel, I'm unclear on that. Comes on a silicon band, which is nothing particularly outrageously good or bad, and Hardlex crystal, which, very quickly, if you're not aware, Hardlex is Seiko's kind of take on mineral crystal. A little bit more robust than mineral crystal, still not as good as sapphire. I probably prefer sapphire, but it's not the end of the world. Movement, 4R36, good solid workmanlike movement, probably the entry level into Seiko's better movements, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. From a usability point of view, this is pretty much a straightforward diver with nothing outrageous or unusual going on. For functions, it's got time, day and date. It's got that 4R36 movement, which itself on one hand is nothing outrageous, nothing particularly special, based on the 7S26, which is actually probably a substandard movement today. However, the changes that Sony, I keep doing that because the camera I'm using is a Sony, and I kept seeing the word Sony right above the lens. I apologise. The changes that Seiko have made to the 7S26, taking it to the 4R35 and 36 line, are very important and worth mentioning. Look, the two obvious ones are that you now get hacking, so the ability to stop the sweeping seconds as you're setting it, therefore get a more precise, more accurately set time. And the other one is obviously that you get hand winding. Hand winding, a lot of people sort of question what's the benefit of being able to hand wind. I'll mention it right now. That is, this watch comes with a 41 hour power reserve. It is extremely difficult to get 41 hours out of a base level Seiko 7S26 movement. The automatic winding is not efficient enough to drive the watch up there. You will probably tend to spend your life living in the 30 to 40% range, which means you'll generally have between 18 or maybe 24 hours power reserve on a watch that theoretically has a 41-hour power reserve. So, and not only, important to note, not only on those lower 7S26 do you have less usable, less likely to be used power reserve, but watches become less accurate the further you get away from full power. And so those 7S26s, which in theory, when fully charged, will be very similar in accuracy to the hand windable movements a little bit further up the ladder, will in real life rarely achieve the same levels of accuracy, because they're sitting routinely at 20, 30, 40% power, not 70, 80, 90% power that a hand-weld movement can get to quite easily. Now this is, as I said, a Seiko diver, and like all Seiko divers, the things that a dive watch need to be will be excellent. And the first thing we're going to talk about here is legibility. Look, despite this really colourful dial, it comes with massive hands that stand out like, as we'd say in Australia, dog's balls, and cannot be missed. The minute hand is long with this massive arrowhead, and there's absolutely no way you're going to mistake how long has gone by as you look at that minute hand against the bezel and the numbers. and the indices on the dial. The bezel is a really Goldilocks, just the right size, and the colors are really nice and in no way detract from the usability of the bezel as a dive, or really just a generalized timing tool. The theme I would give here is that this watch comes all dressed up in a nice neat party frock, but it is down to work, it is down to do the business, and everything about this is designed to be there. I should also mention I'm not normally a big one for lume. I routinely don't talk about lume, and I probably won't bother incorporating a lume shot, but the Seiko Luma Bright is amazing, probably the best in the business. So even in this watch right down at the bottom end, for low light legibility, it's unlikely to be beaten by pretty much anything at any price. Okay, brings us on to controls. This can be dodgy in Seiko watches, and with mixed results, and this watch carries on that tradition. The crown is great. The crown is easy to grip, the threads are very nice, they're nice and smooth, there's no gritty, no sandy feeling. The positions of the crown are nice and crisp and positive, so you know where you are. There's none of this fishing backwards and forwards and saying, am I at first position, am I at second position? And on top of that, everything's very clean. You really do move quite positively, and it sticks in the position that it's supposed to be in. But when we get to the bezel, it's good, but it's not great. It's a unidirectional 120 click bezel, so it's absolutely smack on industry standard here. And it is grippy, so it's quite easy to grip, it's quite easy to turn, but the action is a little dull. It kind of slides a little bit, it kind of rolls from one click to the next instead of like moving crisply from one detent to the next. And the second thing is there's some play, some backlash. When you've picked a selection, it can move. Looking at the watch, I'd say you get maybe half to 3/4 of a minute's movement in the watch. Not critical, but in a world where people just don't do that anymore, and the equivalent watches give that lovely crisp and very precise movement, it's a little bit disappointing. Look, the band is okay, I suppose, if you can do silicon. In fact, I'll go further. If you can do silicon, it's actually a very, very nice band. I had the watch on the basic black silicon band for probably a couple of months. I don't care about this whole, divers don't go on the leather thing. So I've actually now got mine on a matching blue Halloween leather strap, which I think looks even better. I'm not going to bash Seiko though for not providing that pretty boutique product. Look, certainly the silicon band I got secures the watch well. There's a little bit of slipping, but not too much. It's incredibly flexible, and it does suit the look of the watch as much as I prefer, like as I said, the Halloween leather I've gone to. It is a massive dust magnet. All silicon watch strands I've found are. Put them in black and it's even worse. You're constantly going to be looking like you've just been cleaning a cat with your watch band with the black silicon. Now let's talk about the robustness. It's a Seiko diver, for God's sake. It's fully ISO certified and it's going to be built like a tank. The water resistance is only 200 meters, but that's kind of how Seiko roll. They haven't felt the need to join the 300 meter band. 200 to 300 meters is not that big a deal in practical terms. It probably does mean it's a little less water resistant. At least it's been tested to be a little less water resistant, but it's still plenty enough for normal people. Screw down threads, case guards, screw on case back, everything you'd expect from that perspective. The crystal is Hardlex, which is Seiko's proprietary mineral crystal, as I said before. That's okay, but for this price range, or think of it this way, you can buy a sapphire crystal on eBay that would cost you probably $20 for this watch. So you do find yourself thinking, Seiko's going to buy it for cheaper than that. Really, why aren't we getting sapphire on this watch? I can't understand. The bezel is PVD coated steel. Between the last shot and this shot, I jumped on the net and did a bit of searching. It is, the bezel is steel, not aluminium. Given the PVD coating, this should be amazingly shock resistant, and I couldn't imagine it getting too beat up. The ISO certification is going to tell you that shock resistance is okay and anti-magnetism is okay. In terms of accuracy, look, the R436 movement's fine. Seiko promised less than 25 seconds a day lost. Most people report that they get at least that, normally considerably better, so that shouldn't be an issue. Ultimately, this is a watch movement based around durability and reliability rather than pure accuracy, and it will certainly get the job done. It won't be the neatest, cleanest or best looking, but it won't let you down. Okay, so that's the boring watch stuff out of the way, but very few of us are divers, very few of us need the boring watch stuff, and ultimately it all comes down to how good does the watch look and how does it make us feel and what does it say about us. So let's start with the looks. Shockingly good for an entry-level Seiko diver. Look, let's get to the point. This is all about the color and a little bit about the dial texturing. It is a festival of blue with this blue gradient from very bright blue at the 12 going down to a black, almost abysmal blue at the 6, and with sort of mixing that with the texturing of the dial to resemble waves. Looking at waves, you can sort of see it. Imagine those shots you see of like surf beaches where you see lines of waves stacked up behind each other. That idea has been brought across into the dial texturing, and you can really see it there. The bezel gets that same sort of, not a gradient blue in this case, not a graduated blue, but still two-tone blue with a very bright light blue from the 0 to 15, and then there's very much darker royal or navy blue for the 15 to the 60 area. Contrasting all of this drama, and I think that it's important to reference that this is a real contrast. I think Seiko's done this deliberately, and it's a smart choice, are these very clean, simple hands and indices, and also a very clean and ultimately unoffensive day date. This is I think that tension between strict utilitarianism with the indices and the hands and the slight glamour that they've brought from the colorways is actually really well done, and a really good design choice, and makes this watch is probably the core of the appeal of this watch. That said, there's some less than perfect design decisions here. I'm unconvinced, I'll say, by the black PVD on the crown and bezel. I kind of get it from a usability, robustness, wearing point of view, but to me, particularly the PVD on the bezel edges just kind of looks off on compared to the polished steel case. I think going all or nothing would be better, and I note that that's exactly what they did for the replacement to this watch, which has got like the PVD gunmetal grey all over. So that's the big things, but the finer details are actually pretty good too. Certainly, the problems with Seiko chapter ring alignments and indice placements are legend and legendary. Sorry. Legion and legendary. Mine's pretty good. I haven't been able to find any real problems. I did say that there's some interesting that some of the bezel action wasn't great, but certainly visually, everything's where it should be. Everything lines up nicely. There's nothing jarring or acting like a fishhook, sort of just catching your attention and say, look where you don't want to. The cushion case is what it is. Personally, I don't find them particularly good looking aesthetically, but you can't deny it's an incredibly comfortable case. And I do like the way they've kind of made some subtle choices here. There's a nice contrast between the brush case tops and the sort of higher polish of the flanks. Nothing outstanding, nothing amazing, not lots of interesting fluting and bezeling going on here, but everything is quite simple. Those things which have been done are well chosen, and those things that have been done well. So not a spectacular watch, but certainly from a looks perspective, handsome with a with a dash of style and flair, perhaps, is how I'd characterize this. In terms of messaging, there's more good looks here. This is not an expensive watch, and yet it certainly stands out. It's a watch that people will notice. You can't miss this big flash of bright graduated blue. So it certainly stands out. It will be seen. So if you're after a watch that kind of blends into the background, this is probably not the watch for you. Seiko do make a ton of those. Don't pick up this one. It really, that said, this isn't about saying that it can't be used as a kind of a more luxurious watch. The colors and the texturing do give it an element of luxury. Glamour is probably a better way of putting it, above the strict tooliness of a Seiko diver. So I think you could get away with wearing this in a very wide variety of spaces. You can certainly wear it diving. There's absolutely nothing that would stop you from wearing this diving. There is nothing to stop you from wearing this to a bar. There is nothing to stop you from wearing this while you're hanging around the pool, or, you know, somewhere very casual. Likewise, I think you could get away with pulling this at pretty much everywhere, other than you'd probably struggle at black tie unless you're a real strutter and able to pull off pretty much anything. So that balance gives it a really interesting ability to send pretty much whatever message you want about sportiness, luxury, glamour, no matter where you are. And which brings me to the next part, that apart from, whilst it is a Seiko and by definition ubiquitous and everyone's got one, it does clearly stand apart. It's a special edition, as I said before, so you will not see a huge number of these in the wild. Funnily enough, they do seem to be kind of all over the internet, but I don't see many actually on wrists, which is queer. Probably it's because the people that have got them really love them and put them on social media a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot of people who actually own them. Combine that with quite a bold look, and this is a watch that won't be mistaken for anything else. No one's going to look at this and say, oh, you bought that because you really wanted this. No, this is a watch you buy because you want this watch, and there is no reason that you wouldn't want this watch. So in terms of its messaging, it's really saying, I'm good for luxury, I'm good for sport, I'm good for glamour. I bought this because I wanted this, and I'm gonna make it bright and bedazzled, and you're gonna see it. So if that's what you want your watch to be, this watch sells that message for you. So what are you going to pay for this? MSRP on this was $495 US. You won't have to pay that, even though it was a special edition and even though it's harder to get now. You'll usually find these still coming up on places like Chrono24, Amazon or eBay for around about $400 US. That's okay. For the specs, it's actually not great value. It lines up okay with a lot of other sort of similarly spec'd, mostly micro brands. So it's as I said, it's not terrible, it's not great, it's possibly about on the money. You do get, as I said before, there's some really interesting messaging. It's really well designed. The colorway is really nice and really impressive. So that probably elevates it, but at the same time, you're only getting a silicon strap. You're only getting Hardlex crystal. So there's other, from a pure functionality point of view, you're probably getting less than some micro brands would give you. So how would I assess it? It's probably about the right price. It could probably do with being a little bit cheaper. Certainly couldn't go any more expensive, I don't think. Maintenance, it's current Seiko. Maintenance is going to be as easy as you can get, and in particular, even if we're talking about the movement, it's cheap enough that you could just replace it. Finding one, getting tricky, but it is certainly doable. As I said, you won't see a lot of these ADs anymore. It has been discontinued. There is a newer model, but they are still reasonably common, and it's quite doable on Amazon, eBay, or Chrono24. So now we've got to the end. We've gone through all the Tinder profile pictures. We've read the bio. Now we're going to make the decision. Are we going to swipe left on this or swipe right? I'd say it's a soft right. It's generally good. The colorways are brilliant, simple but well executed case. All of that is really great. And for 400 bucks, I'm saying, oh, and I left out, it's so wearable and so comfortable. And for 400 bucks, you're sort of thinking that's a bit of a slam dunk. Why are you only soft? I don't like the black accents. For me, they're just a little off. I think this watch would have been far better looking if the black accents had not been black, if they'd been kept more in natural metal color, or if the watch had gone completely black, as the newer one has. It's only competent mechanically. The movement is better than the XKX, but certainly not as good as, in some cases, only slightly higher priced Swiss variants, which often the same or longer power reserve, almost always, in fact, absolutely always, got a higher beat rates, therefore more accurate, therefore smoother sweeping seconds, routinely better looking, better finished, more reliable, more likely to last the very long distance. So it's competent. Oh, and I left off the bezel action is okay, but clearly subpar compared to others in this price range are only a little bit better. And as I kind of said earlier, its line ball is a value proposition. I'm not going to say it's too expensive, but I am going to say it could probably afford to drop a couple of bucks, but there's no way you could. If this watch at $450 US, no, it now becomes a swipe left. So it's like within 50 to 100 bucks of being a swipe left on this watch. That's why I can only go to the right softly. But anyway, that's where I am. That's what I think about this watch. If you see one, don't say no, but think carefully about what I've said in this video. See if that applies to you, and make your choice based on that. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. If this has been any use to you, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Thanks.